This is Coda Radio, episode 52, for June 3rd, 2013. Hi everyone, you're listening to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. Live this Monday morning over at jblive.tv, brought to you by our fine sponsor, GoDaddy.com. And you know what? I'm going to tell you more about them as the show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us for a whole freaking year, 52 episodes in an amazing row, is our amazing host, Mr. Michael Dominic.
It's me, Luigi.
Did you mute your microphone?
No, you usually say, "How are you this morning, Michael?" and then I come in.
Oh, how are you doing, Mr. Dominic?
No, the moment's passed.
I'm sorry. Well, you know, I wanted to change it up for the year mark.
Yeah,
I just thought it was getting a little stale.
A whole year, 52 episodes. I can't believe we made it past 2.
You know, it doesn't sound like a lot, but then you think that's a lot of weeks. It's a lot of weeks.
A lot of weeks.
And we got a big show today.
Yes, we do.
And you have a new device that you've been teasing me about all week. Actually, you kind of been teasing the entire internet about it all week. Some really big hoopla that broke, and it's also kind of spilled in some of the other shows, gotten me in trouble. And a book. I mean, we got like a packed show for the 1 year mark.
We are the closest to the original format today, and I'm a little proud of that.
Yeah, it's a fungible format. That's what we like to call it here on the show.
I would like to add, though, that this week's topic was supposed to be supplied by the audience.
Right. They were supposed to email in moments over the excellent 52 arc.
But they instead decided that you offended them, which we will get into later.
Right. Well,
yes.
I guess I distracted them with Shiny. Okay, well, why don't we start with somebody who maybe agrees with me maybe a little bit. I don't know. I'll read in and we'll find out. It was submitted to the Coda Radio subreddit by Savage Tiger. Wow. Nice. Savage Tiger, right?
Name.
I know, right? It's really good. I wonder how long. Hold on real quick. I want to see how long he's had that. Savage Tiger has been a Redditor for 1 year, 5 months. So he's
also Sven from IRC, though.
Oh, nice. Okay. Hey, Sven. Yeah. He says, hi, JB fans. In the last couple of Coda Radios, there's been some talk about the not updating issues on Android devices. Chris has his perspective of it's insecure not to upgrade the device, which is a good argument, but not the strongest. That's why I wanted to share a story with you guys to see if it influences your opinion on the matter. A little less than a year ago, we, the company I work for, I'm going to assume it's Lockheed Martin, made a deal with the customer for an Android app. And we did not expect to have to deal with the fragmentation issue too much because we made it clear that in the deal that the app would work on Samsung Galaxy Tab 10.1. This was a device that everyone in the organization had. It runs Android 4.1, so that sounds like it would be a sure bet, right? Turns out it was not the case at all. About 10 days into the development of the app, we stumbled upon a problem. We used a WebView component to render a WYSIWYG content editable div. This was a knockout requirement for the app, so possible to use content editable divs correctly. That's a little hard. He's got a little word foo here. The mouse cursor would be invisible, and sometimes markup would not be set correctly. Okay, so it sounds like there's some funky rendering problems. Luckily, this bug was discovered by Google, and they fixed it right away. And in Android 4.2, it would be no longer an issue. And indeed, after rooting the device, we got it to work just fine. However, the customer did not feel rooting their devices and voiding the warranty, so the deal was off. 10 days of development down the drain, and a really unhappy customer. The experience somewhat changed my perspective on the issue, and I really hope the future is brighter. And see, this is a great example where the Play APIs, updating the Play APIs is not going to fix this problem.
So this is what I've been talking about for literally a year now, right? This is exactly the issue. There are, like any code, the Android APIs can have little issues, little bugs, whatever, and Google is very diligent about fixing them. But if Samsung, in this case, decides not to push the update, you're sunk, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's really we've talked about this in depth. It sucks.
It's just good to get, I guess. You know what that is that's a horror story.
And now the circle is complete.
Yeah. So thanks, Phil.
No, but really, I mean, he's right. I do think the Play services will help for certain APIs, but issues like that, particularly probably in the web engine, aren't going to be serviced like that.
Wow. So then I'm reading through the comments thread, and Mortinian gets in here and says, yeah, he said he had a old web app available on Android tablet, which served up by a severely misconfigured web server, which sends all content. Is an aux stream. It still does. They ignored it, and they said just use Internet Explorer to fix the problem. So, there's all kinds of issues out there where it's like people don't even fully understand like how to even troubleshoot the problem. That's not even an option. And then, there's maybe workarounds that could have been implemented. Like they found one, which is rooting.
But your client doesn't want to hear, oh, but we have this really janky workaround, right?
They really don't. Yeah, they really don't. Well, and it also makes those devices in the long run less competitive because if I was Savage Tiger, aka Sven, next time I would go to a client and say, yeah, buy iPads because we know how to write for Safari and we know you're going to get the next iOS update. Or,
and I think that's what the enterprise...
or roll the dice and say, get a Nexus device. And I'm sure Google's going to support that for a good while.
Right.
But, I wouldn't recommend a Samsung if I was Sven anymore. So it's not good for them either.
It's really not good for anybody. And I mean, I don't want to get back on the soapbox. It would be much easier if Google just reclaimed control of Android and did this. But,
All right, I think we've beat it to death, though.
We beat this one to death. And Sven, I feel your pain. I've never had a problem with Android fragmentation that actually costs me a deal like that. But I've had problems where I've had to do some ugly hacks to get around older, particularly in 2.1. Okay, 1.6 was a nightmare, but 2.1,
I mean, I guess there's a business in being the guy that makes this stuff work in this.
There is, market. But the problem is, if you're going that low now, the phones aren't that powerful, right? So some of the experiences you're going to be developing, consumer side, really aren't going to work. But
si, senor. All right, should we get to the next email? Okay.
Yeah.
Fonzie wrote in, and he says, I'm about 21, and I'm a senior in college, and I have an internship as a manual tester. I guess he's testing manuals. So how do I get development experience in open source? I tried developing for Ubuntu, but the code and development instructions were way too tedious. Also, I've tried GitHub with the same results. The code I try out is way ahead over my head. Any advice on mid-level development would be appreciated. Keep up the great job. Love all the shows. Cheers, Fonzie.
Okay, you have an epic name.
Yeah.
So don't try to start with a distro.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Go to a smaller project. Yuri is always looking for help, and I do owe them a patch. I should probably...
Does that patch make it work in Ubuntu 13.04? Because it works fine in Arch, just saying.
No, it does not.
I think it's actually... Didn't Unity change the way their notify system works again?
I think there's a problem, yeah.
So I think what he did is he said, I want to become a developer, and then he went and tried to do like one of the most advanced level things.
Yeah, you need to start almost anywhere else, really, except for the kernel.
Start with something that is of less complexity. Start with a project that is sort of,
Start with a little library that's a few classes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, I have tons of little libraries laying around that I wrote, and I just keep for Android or iOS.
And then you can build stuff around those libraries to play.
Right, or you can use them.
Yeah, right.
Which is what
later on, yeah. Or, burn them and don't ever show them because you'll probably be horribly embarrassed by them.
Do that as well. I've also done.
Yeah, I wish some of my early shows could just be removed from the internet sometimes.
I wish about the first half of the show could be pseudo ARM tag.
This episode right now? Should we just start over?
Just the first half
okay.
of the total series.
Really?
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. It's funny. All right, that's fine. There's probably some people that's their favorite half. You never know.
Oh, the sound quality is atrocious.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah. We have right now something that could very well put me in debt by another about $400.
Actually, that's $547.
Damn it, shut up, Michael. Damn it. The wife might be listening. About $200, and
nope, not if you buy it from Ting like I did.
I know. Well, it's worth it to be contract free, in my opinion. All right. So what was it? It was on May 31st. I jump on Google Plus, and I'm just having a nice casual day. And I see some jackass posts on there activating my new Ting HTC One. Eat your heart out plus Chris Fisher. Right there, right there. And of course, you know I want the HTC One. You know it's been burning. You spite me, sir. So how is it? Tell us all about
all right. So let's just. I want to be clear. I did not buy a $500 phone to spite you.
Okay. I think it might have been in the equation though.
So what happened is, I found out that my business and my personal Verizon lines had different expiration dates.
Oh yeah.
And my personal one has been done for months, and I didn't know that.
Oh.
So I just kind of
That's always
got
nice.
rid of it.
It's like that's like finding a $20 bill in your pocket.
Just because I'll be honest, like I really don't want to have a contract because I use a phone personally so little.
Yeah.
And we've talked about work-life balance before, but I really do like having separate numbers.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do too. I do one through Google Voice, and I do one, and then I have my personal.
But it's hard to justify another, mine, right?
Yeah.
But then Ting comes along, and I'm looking at paying about $16 a month.
Who should be sponsoring this episode? Dang it.
Yes, who should be? I'm just saying I did use the coupon code.
Nice, thanks.
Anytime, but yeah, the buying process was easy. But so you want to know about the phone? Do you want me to really hurt you?
So yeah, I really want to know, is this the phone?
It is. Fair warning, there is a Nexus one coming out, but it is GSM only, so no Ting, no Verizon.
Right. Which for most people's fine, I guess, but for you and I, it's a no-go.
It's a no-go, but it also doesn't have some of the cool camera stuff HTC's done. And I'm not a camera guy.
Right.
But it does take, I would say, pictures better than the iPhone 5.
Yeah, so I've heard some people saying that, and in one of the reviews I've read that it's interesting you mentioned this. They specifically said that if you take off the HTC software and just put the vanilla Google OS on there, it like loses the actual picture quality goes down.
Yeah, there's some software because they've even skinned the camera. It is totally skinned with HTC stuff, very iOS-esque, which honestly I could do without.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go too far into consumer electronics because I know people get upset. Which, incidentally, when you constantly write in about consumer electronics, you do this to yourself. I'm just throwing it out there.
It is a catch-22, isn't it? We get a lot of emails about it. I think it's just the people who don't like it aren't the ones emailing in. And of course, that's their problem.
So I have been accused of being an Apple fanboy. I like this phone better than the 5.
Really? What about it? The size?
It's not cheap plastic.
Yeah. Well, the 5, the 5's metal, right?
Neither is the 5, but I'm saying compared to the Android phones.
Yeah. So this is why I was thinking over the S4. Yeah.
It's currently vibrating because I didn't put it on silent. It's very fast, even with HTC Sense, which is shocking.
It's got a quad core in it.
Yeah, it's a beast. The battery life seems fine. The audio is fantastic.
Yeah, so it's got the front-facing speakers, which to me sounds extremely excellent because I listen to podcasts and audiobooks using my phone speakers frequently, and on the Note, it's just got this tiny little speaker on the back of it. It's pitiful. Yeah. It's pitiful. And I guess this also has some boosting software to actually make the volume out a little bit louder too, which is...
it's their normal Beats audio, but compared to the 8X, it seems... I feel like they've either used higher quality speakers or maybe updated their software or something, because it sounds a lot better.
To be fair, the guy that wants us to stop talking about phone stuff wants us to talk about Linux from scratch. So, I don't, I'm out.
Isn't all Linux from scratch?
All right, so you think I should get it, huh?
Yeah, I think you should, because I did go to the store and check out the S4. This is a lot nicer than the S4.
Okay, so that's my big hang-up, because I'm thinking about getting the S4 or this, but I think I've decided on the HTC One now. Because you confirmed the build quality thing, which was big for me.
It's also, a great dev phone because everything runs really fast on it.
Well, I was going to ask you, does it make you want to write for Android?
Well, I currently am.
That's why you got it?
Yeah, that's part of the reason I got it. And to be fair, I do have a drawer full of Android devices. I never stopped writing for Android.
Right, yeah.
It's been a much smaller part of what I've been doing.
It makes you wish the rest of the user base would have an experience like this. I guess maybe, in a few years.
Even Sense isn't that bad. It really does. I mean, I know supposedly they're not selling as well as the Samsung devices.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. But it's also extremely limited, like where you can get it. Samsung is really good at worldwide distribution, and HTC apparently this phone is not available in a lot of the world, which is, I mean, come on, HTC, what are you doing?
They need to do, because honestly, I love this phone.
All right. So
All
even
right.
though they're probably going to have a new iOS update just in a couple of weeks at WWDC, you took the plunge, huh? So you're going to stick with this for a while? How's the call
Yeah.
quality?
Ting is pretty good. I think that has more to do with the carrier than the phone, right?
Well, I just mean like the speakers. Like, does it sound clear? And
It all sounds fine.
yeah.
Yeah. So my work phone is still the iPhone 5.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. You crazy. You crazy. So you'll probably be posting more of your adventures on your Twitter and your Google Plus.
Yeah, I'll probably do a full review. I've only had it about a week, something like that.
And you like it. All right. So I think so. My wife is thinking she's willing to try the Note. She kind of likes the size of it and
Yeah.
stuff.
Are you gonna hand her down the Note and take the one? Is that what you're about to do?
That's kind of my devious plan. That's the great thing about being in a relationship where you're a technology enthusiast and your significant other is kind of like also, but not as much. So you can kind of do the hand-me-down thing.
Well, you have to learn it's a business expense line.
Oh yeah. Oh, it is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it really. I had my Android devices crap out on me or it was my Evo. No. I broke the screen of my Nexus, and like I didn't have my phone for a week, and like I went to do last, and I'm like, oh well, crap. I don't have an app pick. I don't have I don't have anything to talk about. Like I don't have anything for this segment right now, and it's like okay. So you kind of have to have an Android device, and then you kind of have to have a current Android device. That way you can try out new stuff. Like when I realized this was a problem when Chrome shipped for Android, and I couldn't get it. And I thought, oh, well now there's going to be a whole new generation of apps that release that I'm not going to be able to talk about on the show.
I should also say that the one has me using my Nexus 7 a lot more.
Whoa, really? Why is that?
I don't know.
See, when I got my Note, I stopped using my Nexus 7 altogether. I don't even hardly use it. My son uses it now. And I think it's because the Note's so big. You don't really need it, when you gotta,
Right.
you don't really
Yeah,
need
well,
it.
the Note is pretty large. I mean, this is not a dainty phone by any stretch of the imagination. It's got some heft to it.
Is it too big?
No, I don't think it's too big, but it's not light.
I'm a little worried it's too big.
It's not that much in terms of size. It's not that much bigger than the 5. In fact, I think it's thinner.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, before we get into the hoopla for this week, unless you any other notes you want to touch on that, Mother?
No. Tell me about Danica. She was texting me this morning, in fact.
Oh, she likes well, Danica's thinking about switching to Android too. I've been talking to her about maybe selling her one of my old devices for like $5,000 because she doesn't know. She doesn't know. Anyways, GoDaddy.com, sponsors of this week's episode of the Coda Radio program. Now, it is a new month, so we've got a new deal for you. First of all, we've got that $249 deal extended thanks to Mr. Dominic taking on the charge there with Danica. Use coder 249 when you check out. You get a .com for $2.49. Listen, if you are when you can get a .com for $2.49, put up a proposal for your client online and then just register a domain for $2.49. It's just that extra level, or put a direct URL on your business card that redirects people to your Google Plus profile or your Twitter page. Just for $2.49, think of some out-of-the-box solutions because that is a fantastic deal. Just use that when you're checking out over at GoDaddy.com. But look, here is where they've stepped things up a little bit. Now, I know .coms, we all want them. They're great, but maybe you need some certs. Maybe you're going to get some hosting. Maybe you're going to get a few other things. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's your first order, fill up that cart and then use the code 35 off number 4. 35 off 4 gets you 35% off the entire order. Everything in that cart, you take 35% right off the top. You know what that is? That is smart
business
when you're shopping over at GoDaddy.com. So use the code. That's right. It's smart
business.
35 off 4 or coder 249 to get the .com for $2.49. And thank you, GoDaddy, for sponsoring the Coda Radio program, and thank you guys for using those codes to let GoDaddy know you appreciate them supporting the program. All right, I got a lot of hoopla to get through here, so should we start? What do you think?
Yes, there's a lot of meat in the hoopla, in fact, and my dog is a huge Mozilla fan.
Well, and apparently a meat fan too. You start talking about meat, and all of a sudden we hear the dog.
The dog's like, hey.
The chat room really wanted us to mention this, and I think it definitely deserves a mention. I think it's one that we're just going to just begin to mull over. But let's talk about this really quick. It's kind of a big announcement from Foxconn at 2 p.m. local time in China, I believe. It came out today, June 3rd. Foxconn Technology Group has announced their support for Firefox OS, Mozilla's open web mobile operating system. The partnership includes collaboration on the use of Firefox OS on Foxconn devices to create new integrated offerings. What do you think of this, Mr. Dominic? And they've got pictures of devices.
So it's a bit coincidental. I too have been looking at Firefox OS for something that I can't talk about.
You are so secretive over there all the time. You always got secrets.
Most of the time I don't have a choice, unfortunately. Uh, there certainly is a buzz. Now, that one in the middle that you're showing looks a lot like an iPhone 4 case.
Yeah, I'll zoom in and then scroll down here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it even has the little button on the bottom there.
No, but really, Mozilla's doing a lot of interesting things, and I feel like they don't get enough credit. I've been meaning to do a show actually about Persona, their identity service, which ties in nicely with Firefox OS. They have been pushing, I would even say, certainly as significant as Google has for HTML5's usability, performance, etc.
Yeah, they've done some really interesting things.
And to be honest, until I took the Firefox challenge and started kind of reading their developer pages, I didn't really know. They seem to have a marketing problem. Every time Google updates the V8, they come out and shout it from the rooftop. Mozilla is doing some really incredible things, even around, I believe, OpenGL and some of the gaming side, but also just some very hey, Persona is kind of, for anybody who doesn't know, it's an online identity service that values privacy and actually makes sense.
Foxconn stated they intend to have Firefox OS running on all categories of 8-screen devices, from smartphone to tablets to laptops to TVs and outdoor signs.
Well, that last one's very interesting.
Laptops is very interesting too, I think, running Firefox OS. What is going on? Is our world about to get very interesting? Finally, are things about to shake up?
Mozilla has kind of been the sleeper in this, right?
God, I hope so.
Yeah, everybody's been going QT. And Mozilla's kind of been sitting back. Yeah, we'll get to you.
Well, and let's be clear. I mean, HTML5 shortcomings. Let's leap ahead. We'll slingshot around the sun, and HTML5 shortcomings in a lot of ways are reduced. Doesn't everybody win if it's? I mean, I know Qt is great, but doesn't everybody win when it's HTML5?
In a way, right? So there are disadvantages if we go to a monoculture of HTML5. But the way I see it, the biggest disadvantage of HTML5 right now is really performance in a very general way. I mean, there are certain vendors, Apple, who don't let you have hooks into a lot of the APIs of HTML5, and there are hacks around it. Read PhoneGap with extensions, or Accelerator has a similar thing. But I don't think that's a major issue still, right? Because most apps are pretty simple. They're client server. Again, anybody who doesn't listen to Last and listens to the show, go listen to Last, because client server, man. Yeah, that's bad.
Uh-oh. You're agreeing with John C. Dvorak, huh?
I do agree with John C. Dvorak.
Okay, so I don't understand why, though, because you seem like in the perfect position to benefit from a client-server relationship, because services equal recurring revenue, which is always something developers want. So it seems like for developers, a Firefox OS-powered world where you have these dumb, weak apps on the front end and these powerful back-end processes powering them, yes, right. That means you have to get into that business, but that means you can charge for that. To me, that seems like a good thing for developers.
Well, so I'm actually already in that business, but just in a more limited way than I am.
A la Instapaper, only done right, where there's maybe more than $2 and there's a more significant reason to actually do it.
Whoa!
What?
Moving right along.
Okay.
No, my point is, I actually agree with you, right? The major problem of HTML5 right now is performance on these types of devices. But time is going to solve that problem.
Yeah, I actually would not. Yeah, so exactly. Yeah. The performance issue is solved by future geniuses. The problem is, I believe these are fundamentally designed to be client-server applications. And so they lock us into everything hosted off-site. HTML5 does not really mean, you could do local storage and things like that, but that's not going to be your primary.
I just want to address something in the chat. SKO, SKOO. I agree with you. PhoneGap is pretty awful, having shipped a number of apps with it. I think HTML5 is going to outgrow those type of frameworks soon. And obviously, from a developer perspective, charging someone for 2 native apps is always better. But the major issue now, unless there's protective measures taken by platform vendors to block you from getting functionality through HTML, which is already starting to happen, but I only think one vendor is going to do it. Really, you know, Intel and AMD are going to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
NVIDIA is solving this problem. You just have to hang out for another 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 5. I know a lot of people are saying 5. I think it's much sooner, right? Because if we look at the industry historically, the best solution, the most performant, best experience almost never wins. It's always the one that's cheap and good enough.
And the one that people can make money off of.
Right, and the one that, no one wants to buy the $500 device, really.
Yeah.
So I'm optimistic. I think, I'll put it this way. I would be more likely to run a Firefox OS laptop than a Chrome OS laptop. And not for any philosophical reason, just because Mozilla has been doing a lot of very impressive things. And
yeah, and you figure long term they have. I mean, this gets into do you trust Google or not? I don't really mean to take us down this path, so we don't have to. But I'm just mentioning Mozilla. It just seems their motivation is to make a platform that is accessible for the web. Google's is absolutely that's part of their strategy, but they also just need more people using Google services, and sometimes that is going to take priority over where Mozilla's priorities are much more clear-cut, I believe. It's sort of a much clearer relationship between me and the Mozilla Foundation, I think.
Right. I would think Mozilla, the revenue stream will be the premier HTML5 platform, and therefore the publisher of these apps. We'll take 30% like everybody else.
Do you think they might do a store kind of thing?
I think that's the next step, right? Because they have all the pieces. They just don't have that final piece.
I guess so. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Especially if they're going to have a phone.
Yeah.
And a tablet for sure. But yeah, this is really good news and really surprising.
Yeah.
Because, most of the devices these days are made at Foxconn, at least in part.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. The Foxconn is in the best position to sort of just take the right operating system. I wonder why Foxconn didn't want to go Android.
Well, it's a differentiator, right? Everybody else is doing Android. And perhaps they don't want to directly compete with their clients, who are usually Android handset manufacturers. That's just a shot in the dark. But I think from a technical perspective, since everybody whines that we don't cover that enough, Mozilla's kind of in a great position right now. Because they're not at the point where they have to, make or break on app sales or numbers of apps in the store. They can hang around and slowly gain ground in China and in other places outside.
I know why they're doing it. Sorry to interrupt.
Go for it.
We're not coming out with our own brand, he stressed. This is a Foxconn rep. He said, instead, the company wants to help technology vendors transition to the post-PC era. At the time, the industry is straying away from Windows and Intel-based chips. Now, many PC vendors are focusing on mobile devices and releasing tablets. Essentially, it's in Foxconn's best interest,
of course,
to destroy the Intel-Wintel dominance. And so this is just sort of chipping away at that foundation. And I say good on him because it's good for consumers, it's good for Foxconn.
And it's good for Mozilla. It's really good for everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll watch it with, interest, but we'll have to see where it goes.
As long as I can install it on my Google Glass, I'm fine.
Oh, God.
So, all right. So I got myself in a little bit of trouble this weekend.
Why did you offend all the narwhals? Why?
So I did not actually mean to get on my soapbox about Mark Shuttleworth closing down Ubuntu's #1 bug. The #1 bug, as a lot of you know, was that Windows had a dominant market share and that this needed to be fixed with a free and open operating system. And it was back in like 2007 that bug was made or something like that. 2004, sorry. It was in 2004.
Can I just state my case on this bug fix? This has been bothering me for most of the week.
Yeah.
Doesn't this feel like pure link bait? Right? First of all, why does that bug exist in a project that's supposed to be professional?
Well, back then it was just a loose group of freedom fighters. It was not a big organization. And
all right, then why is Mark Shuttleworth posting about it, right? And he can't claim, and he doesn't claim, that Ubuntu had virtually anything to do with this, right? In a lot of ways,
that's the weird thing about it. Yeah, that is a weird.
He tries to credit Android, but he has to acknowledge that Apple had but a significant portion, and I would say more significant influence on this, because remember, Android started as a copy of iOS, so
Right, and the irony is that it came after Ubuntu and destroyed, that market dominance in a much more
and
compressed
what's even stranger is, all right, can I put my tinfoil hat on?
Okay.
Can I pop it on?
All right, go ahead. Go ahead. Do you want me to?
Well,
I could fry some bacon if you really want me to.
Let's do it. I read this as A, I need Ubuntu in the headlines again. B, I want to be the next Steve Jobs. And C, which should have been A, he's trying to position Ubuntu as an aggressive tech brand, right? Are you actually frying bacon?
Yeah, don't you hear it?
He has a sound effect.
I always have bacon in the studio, man. Paleo.
No, it just, I don't, I mean, I get it, but in a lot of ways, to me, it also feels like they're surrendering, really.
Yeah.
Like this is the 13-year-old boy way to say, I lose.
I think it's also sort of our way of saying it's also in a big way publicly realigning your team's internal compass from the desktop to your new initiative. And when you have a company who's been around since 2004, who's been working to create the next big desktop operating system, and there's probably a lot of people who inside are probably more jacked up about it than they've ever been since they're seeing, OEM adoption across the board. And HTML5 is taking off, and massive deployments at companies like Google's. They're probably internally, they probably have a lot of excitement, and now their benevolent dictator is what he calls himself, which is kind of I'm thinking about taking that. He's trying to get them very publicly, I believe, to steer the ship into a new direction, and say, hey, we're you know what, we're giving up on that. I think Mark Shuttleworth sees that as a fight and a war that they could continue to fight and continue to battle until nobody survives. I think he sees them. I don't think he sees like a win at the end of that battle. He just sees we'll just have one more device, and I think he believes the path to the desktop is through mobile. By having a good mobile strategy, the desktop and the laptop will become just another, low-end device.
Why? Like, I don't understand. I don't get it, right? To me, Ubuntu's strength has always been on the server. Always.
Right.
Even when I ran it on my desktop.
Well, and that is a big part of their business, the cloud.
Then why aren't they pushing that? When, I don't know if anybody paid attention, but Microsoft's earning reports, which division made the most money? Which division does the best, other than Office? Azure. That's the opportunity. And Linux, and Ubuntu in particular, have a huge opportunity.
Well, I wonder,
they're just,
you were mentioning,
just sitting there.
You were mentioning, why did Mark write this blog post, right?
Right.
Well, on April 16th, the Canonical corporate blog has a blog post about today. Microsoft Corp has announced the general availability of Windows Azure Infrastructure Services, its public cloud offering with the ability to create and manage both Windows and Linux virtual machines as part of Canonical's certified public cloud platform. Ubuntu on Windows Azure is fully certified and has been tested and optimized by Microsoft and Canonical for excellent performance.
So aren't we splitting our bets a little, right? Because I don't know Shuttleworth. I don't think you do. But I feel like he would really like to be a big name in client-side technology.
Yeah.
But he still knows that he has to keep up with the server. Because
I think a little bit to his chagrin, Ubuntu's done significantly better, thanks in a large part to easy deployment on EC2, than it ever did on the desktop.
On the back end, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, Ubuntu is still my preferred back-end server. Mm-hmm. So I just don't, and many others, because honestly, apt-get is fantastic.
I love that in the Canonical blog they add, Windows Azure is committed to openness and interoperability.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I actually find Azure pretty easy to use.
I mean, when you're using the term openness on a Linux vendor's blog, it sometimes carries a different meaning. Openness might mean exportability and things like that, but in some cases, this crowd might consider openness to mean code.
Oh.
Right.
No, that's not how I would have read that well. All right, so getting to code, though. So as a potential Ubuntu client-side developer, this is kind of scary.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. This is why they are crapping the bed before anybody even sleeps in it.
Because wait a minute, you're pushing everybody to develop apps for the Software Center and for the desktop, but it's not a priority,
right?
For you, so why should it be a priority for me?
It's not. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. They are dooming themselves. They're sending a public message that platform is not important to them.
And the other issue is if they're changing their mind on the desktop, who's to say if things go badly on these first few phones or tablets, they're not just going to change their mind there too?
I know this is a recap of the pre-show, but I just,
Right.
I have been following Linux for so long, and I from the inception of Ubuntu to this point now, I have been doing the Linux Action Show the entire time, and what I see for Canonical and Ubuntu is a level of success that they are on the precipice of that they have never been, and it's not really. It's only because they've stuck with it this long that they're there. It's not really anything else they've done, because it's despite a lot of stuff they've done that
Right, but here's the
HTML5
thing.
has taken off, and that Valve is moving over, and that Lightworks is moving over, and that move to HTML5. Things like Google Docs and Gmail make the transition to Ubuntu so much closer to reality than they were even 3 years ago. I mean, like a quantum leap closer, and now they're abandoning that when they've never been in a better position ever.
Okay, here's the thing. Every few months, I get close to really doing something on Ubuntu. And then they post something crazy. And I get nervous, and I say, well, I know I'm going to make money on iOS and Mac, and now potentially Android, right? So let me just stay there. Don't you think, in getting out of, open source philosophy and all that stuff, that if you're trying to pick up developers who might not care about that having one clear message would be good?
Why not? Why not? Why not just not even? I mean, like, even if that's your internal strategy, why even make a big public scene about it? Why not just continue to let that foster some great developments on its own? People will continue to write applications as long as you get your messaging right and you just keep it running. I mean, look
Exactly.
at freaking Windows XP. It doesn't have to be a revolution every 6 months. It really, yes, the fanboys in the review blogs will complain. I agree with you, Mark, and that is obnoxious. But developers like Valve, they prefer it. So why not just do that? Why all the messaging about how it's not a priority? I don't get it.
It just seems like a blatantly, really counterproductive move to their stated goal of, getting developers in the software center.
It really does, and it seems like a huge potential wedge to get people. Like, I would want an Ubuntu device if I had killer Ubuntu apps on my desktop that I wanted to take with me, and vice versa. And if you don't have both, it's not going to work. So if you rob from Peter to pay Paul, which in this case Peter is the desktop,
right? And little Paul is my brother. All right,
you don't say you're dooming yourself either way. You're not going to have success either way if neither one of them are great.
I also don't like all this us versus them, right? I mean, I get it in the community. Obviously the community is very passionate, but for Mark Shuttleworth to be like that. Well, and I didn't like it when Steve Jobs did it.
No, come on now. Isn't this him kind of reversing from that stance and saying, this just really isn't appropriate anymore?
Is it? Because it seems more like he's taking his ball, putting a pin in it, and going home. It really feels like, this doesn't feel like, what, guys, I don't know, maybe I'm misreading it, but he seems very kind of persnickety to me, which is a great word.
Well, here's what he said. Here's his closing statement. He said, even though we've only played a small part in this shift, I think it's important for us to recognize that the shift has taken place. So from Ubuntu's perspective, this bug is now closed.
You know what's going to close this bug? Arch Linux. Preach it, preacher man. Let's hear.
Hey, man, as long as I can install it from the Arch user repository, I'm good. Yes. Yeah, I want to clarify, yes, the Humble Bundle games in the Arch user repository require that you provide the binary. They don't let you pirate. I should have said that in the show yesterday. I should have said that.
The first thing I did when we got on the pre-show, did you steal all those games?
No. And I think it's also, I could split hairs, but by the way, that bug also claimed that it was going to be replaced with an open platform.
iOS is known for its openness.
Somebody was joking that if Launchpad supported, you could mark it as workaround, but it doesn't support.
So it's funny. I have in my the way I do my book tracking, I have fixed and resolved, which we have as two different things, right? Resolved is we're not going to deal with this right now,
right?
Or we've done some kind of hack. So I don't know, man. I mean, with things like OpenShift, I just feel like they're missing a huge market. And I just, honestly, I don't get it.
I know.
I want, I want to support that platform. I really do.
Well, it's concerning, right? Because it they really are onto something, and it is
Yeah.
going to be a hard thing to recover from if they blow it. You were starting to say that. You were saying what happens if it doesn't work out in 3 or 4 years, and
Well, that's what I'm concerned with. Will they just say, you know what, we're done with mobile too?
yeah, maybe. Yeah. All right. Well, so guess what? I should have taken the Firefox challenge because my Chrome browser locked up on me.
Fantastic. So I have something I could tease for next week.
Do it.
So I have been going through something of a crisis of platform faith.
What kind of platform?
So I shouldn't say platform. I should rephrase. Programming language style. I seem to no longer like Ruby. The hell?
I just felt like that needed a punctuation. Since I don't have a web browser anymore, I only have my soundboard to play with.
Fair enough.
You don't like Ruby anymore?
And I don't know. I've been experimenting with, I've been playing with Java Play and most recently ASP.NET. And I'm finding myself getting stuck in a certain type of language these days.
What
The
do you mean
reason
by
I'm C family style, right?
Okay.
So curly braces,
Yeah.
no implicit returns.
Are you just settling into your preferences? Maybe you're just getting old.
It's weird though, because the languages I'm starting to like are the ones I didn't like before. In particular, C#. And I'm just, next week's topic is going to be kind of the generalist thing. How you pick your platform, how you pick your language.
Sure.
And really, does that say anything about you, right?
I think a lot of people think it does. I think that's one of the reasons we get so many emails about this is because people sort of identify, okay, well, now I'm a X guy. I'm a whatever, C#, whatever.
Because honestly, it's been bothering me because, I know a lot of guys who have been doing C# in particular for, 15 years. And that's it, right? Like, if they can't import a DLL from Microsoft, they can't do it. Like, I'm not being a jerk. I'm not joking. I mean no offense.
No, in fact, it's the same in the IT world. Like, I know guys who sort of just know how to manage Windows boxes, and that's fine. But a lot of times you then get to a network device that isn't running Windows, and they treat it like I kind of treat some of the more complex phone systems like, oh, I'm not a phone guy, sorry. They're kind of like, oh, sorry, I can't touch that. And it's very limiting in a sense. And I don't know if that's a appropriate parallel, but it seems like people sort of get into these not industry ruts, but sort of like job requirement ruts where you really only have to focus in on a very narrow vertical, and that sort of becomes your world for so long that you think in a certain way and you sort of prefer a certain methodology, and when you go outside that box you get a little lost.
It's very strange though, because it's creating a weird problem for me. I mostly work on iOS and Mac and things like that. And I still love Objective-C because it's crazy. But I kind of like ASP better than Rails now. But I hate working on a Windows box. I hate it. I freaking hate it.
You just don't like the interface.
No, I don't like that you can't do simple things in what I would consider the right way. I mean, I understand that PowerShell replaces a lot of what I want, but it's not a perfect replacement, right? Now,
negative in the freedom dimension.
Thank you, Richard. For once, we agree.
Yeah, it's true.
No, but I'm used to slapping a few the Ruby scripts together with a pipe or whatever and doing what I need to do. It's just a whole different paradigm. The fact that everything's buried in menus makes me a little nervous, right? I shouldn't say this. We're going to get a lot of hate mail. It almost feels like development with training wheels a lot of the time.
No, I actually feel, oh gosh, we are going to get a lot of hate mail now.
We're going to get a lot
That's
of
how
hate
I
mail.
feel Windows administration is too. I feel like a lot of times it is administration with training wheels, and that if they would just let me peel back the top a little bit, I could get it fixed and done a lot faster.
I mean, there's a lot of things in Visual Studio where it's like, there's these weird configuration tabs, and if you click a box, it changes everything. But it doesn't tell you what it does. And you can kind of go on MSDN, but I guess I'm used to being able to pop open a Python script or a Ruby script and be like, okay, what the hell is this doing?
Yeah, buddy.
And it's causing a very strange conflict. I feel like Vader. Was Richard coming?
No, I was just moving my mic.
Oh, Vader's over here doing his thing. I'm sorry, the Emperor's shocking Luke. Luke can be Tux in this scenario.
Okay.
And I'm standing here like, it's really easy to deploy to Azure. C# is a good language. It's kind of Java done better. But god damn it, I can't see any of the source code, and I really don't know how this stuff works.
I always believe this has been the trade-off. Same with the administration end is the Microsoft tools will get you up and running, often very fast, and will get...
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, it took me a weekend to do in ASP what would normally take a few days.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to set up, say I wanted to set up, just because I just did this just very recently, there was a 15 terabyte array of disks that I wanted to set up and make and use software RAID and get them all redundant and all this really fancy stuff with snapshots and all this kind of stuff. That was a 25-minute job in Server 2012, and that was more like a 45-minute job under Ubuntu. But I believe in the long run, the Ubuntu installation it already is a better system. I mean, it just because there's a very finite level of control. I have a more exact specific configuration. It's just a different setup.
I can give you a real-world dev example. I mean, this is crossing platforms, and I'm not going to suggest that Apple's more open because they're not.
Bring it.
There is a library in iOS and can be used on Mac called ASI HTTP. It is now very old, and the original developer doesn't support it anymore. Up until about 6 months ago, I actively used a fork of it that was heavily modified, right? It now has automatic reference counting, has a bunch of convenience methods. I cleaned up a bug that I found in caching of certain types of media. Obviously, the developer doesn't maintain it. He wasn't interested in a pull request, so didn't even want to review it, which is his right. And he recommends a different project to everybody. I just like ASI. Or at the time, I liked ASI. And I've moved on to other things. Which is fine, right? That's on GitHub, whatever. I did my stuff. I literally audited the code the first time I used it. It was fantastic. And I made my changes, and it works now the way I like it. Then I go to the .NET world. And you get these DLLs, and that's it. Like, there might be a wiki with an API, and maybe I'm, whining over nothing. It's not to say that this method is bad. It's just I'm conflicted because magic is nice, right? Like, if I can just be like, perfect example from the .NET side. Well, in iOS and ASI, I have to set C blocks, for those of you who do C or Objective-C know what I mean, to do responses for asynchronous calls. .NET, there's a keyword called await and async that does it for you. But there's some weird edge cases, because there's a lot of magic there, where in the Objective-C way, it is about 25 lines of code minimum, depending on your coding style, but it's around there. It's certainly a lot more typing. It's certainly... You have to know how to understand how blocks work. You have to know a little bit of the way C does things. But it's right there, right? You're reading down, you jump into the block, you read the code procedurally in the block. It makes sense. You go over here to the await async side or the .NET side, and I have no idea, and I've tried to Google it. They give you some documentation, but ultimately at some level it's magic, right? It works because it works. And if it doesn't work, well, here's some workarounds, but you don't really know why it didn't work. You don't know if it's your mistake or their mistake. And I mean, I'm not that egotistical.
I mean, just to zoom out and put my hippie shirt on, don't you feel like we've talked a lot about when you develop an application and you depend on other platforms, be it GitHub or even, Xcode and C#. If something you're developing in, if you have the option of that tool set being open source, doesn't that put you in a better position to kind of...
Not the IDE.
Not so much the IDE, but maybe what you're writing it in, things like... things like that. Don't you feel like you have almost like a little more of an insurance policy there?
So yeah, and I just want to prevent the hate mail. So C# and Objective-C are, well, more C# is a standard or whatever, but It's the platform I think you're talking about, right?
I am for the most part. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
the framework.
yeah.
It's the frameworks. Yeah, I mean, certainly if I can step through a debugger and see what the hell's going on, that often helps me.
Right.
And
well, and you also just can kind of keep an eye on where the future direction of development is going. I just think, I don't know, I just think that sometimes when you rely on that magic, sometimes how that magic works changes on you in the future.
Right.
And then...
And the chat room doesn't like the term magic, so let's call it abstraction, right? The extreme level of abstraction.
Yeah.
Where you just type in a weight and you fire off 3 or 4 threads and something happens in the background.
Magic. It's magic.
It's magic. I mean, I understand why it's there. And the other issue, which we'll probably have to talk about next week, is the way they do data binding. I totally get why it's there. It's fantastic. Except it kind of just does things.
Mm-hmm.
And it does the right thing.
That's tempting.
Oh, it is super tempting. Right? Do a quick XML file, or I'm sorry, XAML, and most of your app is written. But you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And
you know,
I would love to hear from some old school .NET guys. Was it always like this on that side of things? Is this just something you've grown to live with? Or is this not a problem for you? I mean, maybe there's a counter argument that, well, why would you want to deal with the extra 30 lines of code or whatever to do the block?
Yeah, there is an argument to be made that things move so fast and you redo things so often anyways that it's almost just worth using some of that magic, because, you know, if things change and you have to change the way you do it in a year or two from now, you might have had to do that anyways. You know, You never know.
Yeah, but for next week, so if, you know, people who want to write in, it'd be interesting if you've had similar experience or perhaps identifying with a platform or a framework.
Yeah.
Because I think, it's going to get very code heavy. So.
All right. Well, I know you got a couple picks before we get out of here, like an app pick and a book pick.
I have an app pick. So I have Airmail, which is a new OS 10 email client for Google.
Oh, trolling me, because this is something... Oh, man, this looks nice.
It is very nice. So the reason I bought it is I love Sparrow, but Google bought them and tossed them in the trash.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, you know, you don't really want to be running an old email client forever. So I ended up picking this up. It was only a few dollars. I think it was like $4.
And it looks like it has an S-ton of features, including Google Drive integration. I don't even know what that's about.
I use barely any of the features. The only thing that's really missing for me is proper search. But I'm assuming that's coming in.
All right. So that's Airmail.
Yeah, they're on the Mac App Store.
It's a very nice mail client, huh?
It's a very nice mail client.
All right.
And continuing to troll the audience, my book pick is Gates. Now, before you guys freak out, it's an autobiography. It's a biography of Bill Gates.
Who? Not familiar.
The guy who wrote that letter to hobbyists.
Oh, yeah. The guy that doesn't like software. No, I kid. I'm totally kidding. I just thought
the guy who loves BASIC.
I just thought if we were trolling, I would just go all in.
It's actually a pretty good read. In particular, I didn't realize how really into BASIC he was.
Oh, really?
Apparently, he kind of wanted everybody to just stick with BASIC.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
The Washington Post called this book impressive and, well, meticulously researched.
Yeah, it is very good.
Interesting. Yeah, it's got some good reviews, too. It's an in-depth look at Microsoft, my favorite account of the early Gates. We'll have a link to this in the show notes towards the bottom of the Coda Radio show notes. If you go over and find episode 52 and then scroll down, look for Gates, how Microsoft mogul reinvented an industry and made himself the richest man in America. We'll have a link to that. It's only $9.99 on the Kindle, or paperback's primable, but it's a little more expensive. Very nice, Mr. Dominic. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this show, doesn't it? To the 1 year mark.
1 year to rule them all.
All right, well, where should people follow you throughout the week if they just didn't get enough?
They can find me at DominicM.com and Twitter at Dumanuka.
Holy smokes. Don't forget, Coda Radio is live Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, over at jblive.tv and jblive.info for the audio. Then available for download Monday afternoons over at jupiterbroadcasting.com. We always appreciate a mention in the iTunes store if you give us a rating or a comment, or send the show to somebody you like that might be into development. We always love the word of mouth marketing. We appreciate that. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Hope you can join us live next week for episode 53. And if you can't, well, that's okay. We love you anyways, baby. See you right back here next week.